coming up on the Lui Diaz Podcast.
And then I came here, and then it all changed. And I started working with all these amazing artists and producers, and I realized how good I am with working with other people and finalizing their ideas. So I realized, like, okay, this is awesome. This is what I want to do. Engineering.
Hi, and welcome to the Lui Diaz Podcast, the podcast where you'll meet some of the most fascinating and incredible people from all walks of life. And together, we're inviting you in to be our special guest as we take you through some of their amazing experiences, adventures, and journeys. So sit back, and I hope you enjoy this episode of the Lui Diaz Podcast. I just want to welcome everyone to another episode of the Lui Diaz Podcast. It's a great pleasure for me to be bringing you someone I'm really excited to have today on the show, to be honest. Caleb Nathan, he's lead mastering engineer at Studio 18 in Orlando, Florida. We're going to just chat and we're going to dive into your world. I'm really excited to get to know you, especially because I've already heard you a little bit through Dana J's podcast, something you recorded a couple of years ago. And I was like, wow, this guy, I like the way he thinks. Welcome, Caleb.
Awesome. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. Podcasts are a blast. I feel thankful that you've invited me here. I'd love to give you a look into my unique musical life. Like you mentioned, I'm from Orlando, Florida, or I'm working out of Orlando, Florida now, but I'm originally from New Hampshire. I lived the first 18 years of my life up there. And then when I was almost 19 or about 19, I moved here to the Orlando area with my grandma to pursue music. I did a semester of some college general education courses that were just commonplace. I left things open-ended because I was like, I don't know what I want to be. And then after a semester of college courses, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I think I want to do music. So I moved here and just focused on making music every day. And that led to, 5 years later, I'm the lead engineer of this beautiful, amazing studio. Right now I'm in Studio A. This is where I do recording, mixing, and mastering. Most of my time here I am an engineer. So I do more technical stuff. Most people come to the studio with instrumentals ready, and I just record them, help them with their lyrics, with their performance, and then kind of mix them in their own special, unique way to give them, to make them sound like the best version of themselves and present them in a creative, artistic way. And then I master it, which is kind of like the last quick little step you do in the music making process. It's very technical, but you just basically make the song or the mix translate to different, speaker systems, whether it's your iPhone, a laptop speaker, car speakers, headphones. If you're at the club or if you're at a festival, it should all be relatively strong and all around good sound. But yeah, that's where I am now. You are in Melbourne, Australia.
I sure am.
How, I was going to ask this earlier through DMs, but I thought I'd save it for the interview. How did you hear about me? How did you start following me?
Look, man, you know what? It's the world of algorithms, right? So,
yeah.
And you know all about that, right? But I think, through this podcast specifically, because I don't have, let's just say, a niche, I'm always looking to cast the net really wide as far as the stories I want to tell, because I think that inherently we're all intertwined in some way. And that whether you're an adventurer from Poland that climbs Mount Everest, or you're a sound engineer in Orlando, Florida, you're going to have something in common. And those are the things that I really love exploring. And so I drive Instagram's algorithms wild because I'm always just checking out different things and they don't know what to send me. But they do know that I love music and that I love people that are passionate about music. I follow this one page on Instagram called Good Shit Radio, which is just like, I just love it. They're always pulling out like the best old school tunes, like stuff that's long forgotten in the mainstream. And so, yeah, I think maybe the algorithms just sent me Studio 18, or was it Dana J? I'm not sure if it was him first or you. But anyway, I was super glad to make this connection and reach out to you. And you've been awesome. You've been super accommodating. And I'm really excited to get to know you because, like I said earlier, I was listening to the Dana J podcast that you sent me. And you guys, I think for that show, and that was recorded a couple of years ago, so it might be a bit hazy in your memory. But you were there with Dana, with, I think, an Orlando artist named Sixella. Is that right?
Oh, that's correct, yes.
And you guys were discussing the topic of emotions in that episode. So you went really deep, and I love that because, as artists and as sound engineers, I guess people might at times try and pigeonhole you into that niche to only talk about sound. But the fact that you guys were talking about the emotions and how deep you went with emotions, I just love that
Yeah.
conversation that you guys had. And that's one of the reasons why I was super keen to get you on, because I just learned how considerate and how thoughtful you are and how great of a listener you are, which I thought that's an amazing quality to have, especially for a lead engineer.
Yeah. As a lead engineer, definitely a great quality to have. I'm definitely someone who is kind of like, I feel like I'm a really good wingman. I don't have a certain brand or style or like agenda to push, whereas other like artists and entrepreneurs do. I like to see what other people have going on in their lives and their careers and kind of understand where they're coming from, where they want to go, and then kind of help them in their process. And understanding emotions is a big thing. One, helps you make great music. But two, if you are making a product or giving a service, the quality of how the consumer interprets the product or the service is really dependent on the feeling that they get left after using the service or buying the product. So it's whenever you're even though it's commonly like seen as an art thing, understanding emotions also great in a business sense, because if you can understand how your consumer feels, you can sell them on that feeling as opposed to selling them on facts. Facts help, but I think the feeling is what really seals the deal. And once you understand that, you can combine the two. One, you can make great music that has a good blend of real, visceral, organic human emotion. And then you can kind of strike a chord with a certain niche of people, or maybe a whole generation of people, especially, something the whole globe was united in a struggle over was quarantine. And I feel like that closed a lot of people off physically, but also socially. So something as simple as that, if you pay attention to it, you kind of know that those lasting effects, even though it was, 2.5 years ago at this point, are still kind of there. And it was kind of exacerbated by like cell phones and social medias, and we all just kind of buried our faces into our phones. And TikTok has just made everything worse because it's leaked into different social medias and turned Twitter and Instagram into places where you get lost swiping. So if you're open to things like that, you can start to understand where a lot of the people or the whole world is at right now, and then kind of package music in a way that helps them and makes them feel like they're not alone, and that other people are going through very similar things as well. Yeah. In that podcast that I did with Dana, he did a whole series. Did you hear any of his album commercials? He did podcasts, and a lot of the artists and producers who were helping out with the album that he made, we did shows with. So Six Ella was one of the artists on a song called Black Girl Magic, and the beat was made by Dana probably a year before release, and he wanted an artist to be on that beat. And the name of the title was already there from a previous songwriter who kind of wrote some of the hook. And we were throwing ideas around of who we wanted to pick as the artist, the main artist. And he was picking a lot of safe options, I think.
Right.
And more like pop based or R&B based, like good singers. Great artists, nothing wrong with their styles, but I think in the context for the rest of the album, it was filled with really technical rappers. So I talked to him and I was like, dude, you need to get a really technical female rapper to sing the song Black Girl Magic that has a hook that was written by a different songwriter. But actually it took me 2 weeks to figure it out. I was scrolling through Snapchat on some memories, and it was showing me some event that I was at somewhere in Orlando, and Six Ella was there, and she was rapping, freestyling over a beat. A DJ was playing a beat, and she was just freestyling off the dome, off the top of the head. And somewhere in that freestyle, she said Black Girl Magic. And I was like, oh, wow, that was a year ago. And now 2 weeks ago, I was like raking my brain trying to think like who's going to be this artist for this song, Black Girl Magic. And she said the title of the thing, and it just clicked immediately. I was like, okay, Dana, you got to go, you got to come next Sunday. There's going to be an event called, they call it WTF, We the Future. There's a few artists who perform at this place called the Hippie Hideout. She was the headliner. We went over there, and she just completely nailed the show and blew Dana away. And I was like, dude, Dana, this is her. And I knew her also because some of the events that we do here at the studio, one of our staple events is Midnight Monday. We've been doing that several times a year for 3 years, maybe even a little bit longer than that. I was an intern when my first Midnight Monday went down. I think it was actually, maybe 4.5, because I've been involved in the studio for 5 years at this point, and I think it was about 6 months into my internship. So I met Sixella first through one of those Midnight Mondays, but I've seen her around the city since then, and I just so happened to have a video of her freestyling an event, and I was like, that was it. And that was the last song that we finished up for that project too. It was a great project.
Yeah, I love. There's so much that you touched on there that I could go back to. I mean, the way that you described yourself as a wingman, firstly, is something that I could probably do a whole episode on, because I love that idea of the people in society that don't necessarily see themselves as having to be the hero in every story, but being a part, like an important cog in people's stories. I think that's so underrated, and those unsung heroes and those homegrown stories are the ones that I really love telling, and also shining a light on people that want to help others succeed. And when you wrote to me a little while ago, you said that you're passionate about helping artists bring their visions to life through exceptional sound production, and I'm just like, yes, we need people that want to help people, and that's what they're passionate about. So yeah, I love that. And then also the way that you described emotions and how important emotions and feelings are. I think my ex-girlfriend used to say something like, people won't remember what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel, or something like that.
That's great.
Yeah
That's true.
Yeah, it was really important, because I hadn't really heard that before, and she sort of brought it to my attention. And just then, when you spoke about, the emotions and being really in touch with emotions and understanding how not only they can help you create great music, but also how important they are from a business sense as well, and then how you can combine the two, I think that is super underestimated in today's world. Especially, because we're becoming so much more and more out of touch, I think. And you mentioned it yourself there, like social media is just another thing that's getting us to, I don't know, lose touch with ourselves a little way. Even though it's awesome that I can meet great people like you and we can make these connections and form these bonds, it has that dark side to it, right? That we can also get lost in scrolling and lose touch with our emotions. And then, of course.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Yes, no, I just wanted to quickly touch as well on you mentioning Studio 18, how you got together and helped Dana J. I guess you introduced him, to Sixella, and all the idea of her being on that track, and how an amazing Studio 18 is for being a community hub for you guys, especially with Midnight Mondays. I haven't gotten to know you guys for very long, but one of the things that became really evident really early on in my research was how community focused the studio is. And I love that. Enjoying the episode so far? Be sure to follow us and leave us a review on whichever podcast platform you're listening on. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of the episode.
For sure, yeah. I think great things happen when people get together. I used to be what's called a bedroom producer, where I just stay in my bedroom and I make all these beats and I do everything myself. I record everything myself, perform everything myself, program things, mix it, master it, post it online. And that was fun. That was cool. That allowed me to get very technical and learn all the ins and outs of production and engineering. But once I started interning here and working in groups, I just saw how important it is to make compromises and to let other people's opinion kind of let the art grow into where it goes. So much so to the point where if I go to make anything by myself anymore, nothing really good ever comes out. It's like I need someone else, because I can do anything I want. Like, I have so many versatile skills that I can just go into any genre and tap into any mood, but it's overwhelming, But when I'm with someone else, it's like, okay, I'll talk to them. I'll see what they've been listening to lately, what they've been feeling lately, what makes them excited. And then we get to somewhere fun faster. Working alone it's a little bit, it is freedom, of course, but I think it's much worth it to spend time working on something with others, being part of a team, being a cog in the wheel, as you say. I think for the most part, I learned how to listen to my emotions more through this job at this studio. I've always been a very logical dude. I think a lot, and I've been starting to do more than think. I think that's kind of healthy for me from where I come from. I'm sure there are people who are the opposite and need to, think a little bit more than before they do things. I'm sure a few people might come to mind for you. I know I can think of a few. But for me, I was the opposite. I would always overthink and lead my life through logic and using my brain. Through here, I met a lot of artists and creatives who follow more of their heart and their emotions and their gut feelings. I don't think it's right to stick to one path or the other, but you got to be good at both, and you got to know when to change. You got to be ready to use both. That's a big lesson I've learned from the studio, for sure, and from a lot of creatives that I've met through this place. And it is a hub. You used that word earlier. It's a big hub in this city. My 5 years here working, I'm around 900 artists that I've worked with, 900 paid artists. studio itself has been around in this house for 11 years, but yeah, this place it's a magical place because one, you come up and a lot of people call the studio line and be like, hey, I'm kind of confused, I'm in the middle of a neighborhood and it just looks like a regular house, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just stop outside real quick, I'll flag them down and tell them to park off to the side, and they come in, and then it's like a museum. There's Orlando art all over the walls. Studio B, Studio A has all this like very particular handmade acoustic paneling that is practical in the sense that it helps with the sound of the room and it helps with acoustics, but it also has a very particular design and shape to it. It's just a balance of aesthetics and then practicality, because that's the whole name of the game of this place. Studio 18, the name came about because of the numbers 1 and 8 in supreme mathematics symbolize 1 is logic and 8 is creativity. So in the music world, when you work in a studio and you're engineering, things get very technical and scientific, and you're tweaking your EQs and setting your attack and release times on compressors, and just getting very sciencey. And that you can dive into a whole world of that, and that's only half of the whole story. The other half is the creativity. As an engineer, we probably have the most technical jobs in the music making process, but there's still creativity to be introduced into this part of the process. And if you can balance and you can get both right, I think that's how magic's made. I think that's what makes the studio really special.
Yeah, I really love that, man. I love that. I was just thinking, ones and zeros. That's so binary. That's so digital. But ones and eights is like this merger of two really separate worlds that when you combine the two, like they do make magic, I think. That head heavy, thought heavy, technical heavy process mixed with just full heart. I really love that because I can relate to it for sure. But I mean, again, you just touched on so much there. Collaboration for you is super important, which, I mean, there's so much that you're saying that's just so life affirming and philosophical in just general ways. That's got, you can take out of the context of being a sound engineer and you can put it in any other context, and it's so true. If I think about some of the adventurous people that I've met, some of their most triumphant moments in their travels and journeys has been, the times when they had to collaborate with other people, when they had to rely on other people, pardon me. So yeah, I really love that. But also, that following the heart piece that you touched on as well, like artists that really follow their heart. Because I was thinking lately, some of the people that I feel may be struggling or not taking advantage of some of the opportunities that they have, or maybe not taking advantage of the time that they have. Like I've got a couple of friends that, they've worked really hard their whole lives and they've really never traveled anywhere. And, we're pushing our late 30s, getting into our 40s soon. And I'm just thinking, gosh, like time is a commodity that you can lose. Like an hourglass, you watch the sands just kind of disappear to the bottom. And you've got to be mindful of that. And you've got to get out of your head and stop thinking about your mortgage sometimes and start thinking about the things in life that will lead to, I guess, those beautiful experiences. And they're always the heart ones, right? They're not the head ones necessarily.
Yeah, I'm also guilty of just kind of leaving too much and not being as adventurous as I used to be. I've kind of sacrificed that in a way when I took the job here. And it was definitely a totally worth it sacrifice. But yeah, it's one of those things that if this wasn't a job that I was just absolutely passionate about, I wouldn't have done it. Like, I love this job. I love waking up and doing this every day. I'd be crazy if it was any other job, but all my friends and family understand because this is a great thing that I've got going on here. I don't advertise this, and it's not very much out there, but I do live here, so I wake up every day, and it takes me 10 steps to get into this room. That's my commute to work. 10 steps, and then I'm here, and I get lost in here, and I do a lot. There's a lot of other engineers in the city. And because of, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Full Sail University or First Institute is a little bit of a smaller school, but Full Sail, they blast out advertisements to just all across the country. I've seen commercials up in New Hampshire, which is, it's like a 24-hour drive away from my home state there. I saw a commercial for Full Sail back then, and I'm not sure if they broadcast to around the world now, but big college, I should say, university. They put out a lot of engineers, and this industry is super competitive. I feel like it's one of the things I've sacrificed is just kind of like personal time and certain adventures. It's something I can't keep doing for as long as I've been doing it. Like, I feel like eventually there'll be a point where I'm like, all right, time to step back a little bit. But because I'm single, because I don't have any like pets or animals, or I don't have any debt or any, like, I'm just kind of free. I've just taken upon myself that this is going to be my college. Like, this is going to be of me, like, waking up every day, grinding it out, learning, studying, meeting new people, and just learning both art, production, engineering, sales, marketing, event coordinating, all of that. All been kind of just not a crash course, not a master class, but you just kind of like throw yourself into the mix of it, and then you kind of learn as you go. I think that's kind of been my preferred way of learning.
Yeah. And I mean, like, on a holistic level, it's like, well, you're living at your university, you're living at your college, you're living and breathing what you do every day. And also what I love about that is that your philosophy around feeling and understanding emotions and how they tie into, like I mentioned earlier, not only the creative process, but, the business process, the commercial side of things. You have people that come out of colleges and universities with, master's degrees in commerce that don't talk like that don't think like that. Because when these people go to learn, they go to learn what someone else has to teach them. They don't necessarily learn from doing and learn from feeling, which is, I think, like, really super important way to learn in life. Just, roll up your sleeves and go to work, and you'll figure it out along the way. And I think also, again, that's kind of undervalued in certain circles, but I think in your circle it's really important because you're constantly needing to communicate and connect with artists. And, artists don't connect with suits and ties. They don't. They connect with the people that get them. So again, another reason why maybe, some of these institutions aren't offering the full spectrum of the education that you really need to be good in this business.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with the statement, though. There's so much, they can only teach so much with books, and they do have amazing facilities with amazing gear and all that. But after you learn through whatever school you go to, whichever, and you're out of the university and you're not in those like pristine, like almost looks like really expensive gear, really top line studio stuff. And then once you graduate, you got to work your way back in through experience to get back into that level of studio again. And when you work your way back up, you're starting with studios that have like beat gear and used gear. And you're like, okay, I learned how to do all this amazing stuff on a really expensive SSL console board and these really expensive like Neve console, this and that. And then when you get back to, the intermediate gear, a more like realistic setting, it's like, okay, do I have what it takes to make this interesting? Because it's all there at first, and then I take it away, and you got to build yourself back up, and that's where the creativity comes in my opinion.
Yeah, But it's also proven, right? Because I mean, we all know that, like, the story of, say, and my audience should be familiar with Dr. Dre, at-home producer for a long time until he could take the next step in his career, and super committed to working with the equipment that he had and making things happen with that. And I'm sure it wasn't high-end gear at the start of his career.
No, yeah. Especially at that time. Things were a lot different, though. We have it so easy now. I just press a few buttons and I can re-record. Back then, they were using tape. And I've seen videos of that, and that looks so annoying. I don't know if I could do everything that I've done if I had to do it that way.
You could have.
It has a great sound to it. It has a cool, unique sound. But watching these guys slice, like, oh, this word right here, I need to use this slice of tape and patch it in, and okay, now we're using two different takes from two different tapes, and it's like, oh man, wow, it's a physical thing.
Yeah, but you know why I know that you could have? Because, like,
why?
Put it in context, right? They were creating something that just hadn't been done before. So, it's the excitement of being able to do something and seeing, what could be potentially made from it. I think that's what drives people. And it doesn't matter if it's, in the 60s or the 90s or the 2020s that we're in now. Like, we use what we have at our disposal at the time. And if the excitement is great enough, like, you'll get the scissors out and you'll snip whatever tape you need to make that thing sound funky. And that's actually, it takes me back to one of the things that you said on that episode with Dana J, when you guys were discussing, like, what is the most important emotion. And I think you said excitement. And I was like, bang. Like, yes, I love that you said that, because the way that you contextualized it And I can't remember exactly the words you used. I'm paraphrasing here, but it was like, about excitement, creating potential in your life or something like that. I'm not sure if you remember. Maybe bring.
Yeah, I think I remember there's like a duality to excitement because like sometimes you can feel like a big day's ahead of you. Like it's one of the biggest days of your life. Maybe you get married, maybe you get a promotion or something like that. And the excitement of that can sometimes be scary. It can be nervous, but it's an indicator that something big is to come and you should be ready for something. One way or another, something really fun's about to happen, something really scary is about to happen, something crazy, something unpredictable. And I think that comes from not knowing exactly. I don't think it's exciting to know exactly what's going to happen. I think it's exciting to know all the things that can happen because those are like limitless. If you're put in a box and there's only one way out, to me, it's hard to think of a scenario that's exciting. You have to have multiple different possibilities, and that's kind of what's entertaining to us because we like to do that. We like to have pretend conversations in our head and set up scenarios that aren't even real and just test out different like possible future realities and kind of mentally prepare ourselves in ways. So excitement that's probably why I picked that back in that. This was 2 years ago,
Yeah,
but
it
I do
was.
remember that. That is good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely one of the things that stood out to me in that episode, how you talked about excitement in that way. And I think, sort of bringing it back to, whether you could have worked in the 90s with tape and stuff and that analog style, remember that was technology for them as well.
It's true.
They
I
were like,
think I think I
oh,
could have I think I could have done it. It would be fun. I would have had a great time. I definitely couldn't have done it as efficiently as I work now because of just the advancements of technologies. And I think the rate at which I work with artists, like today, I worked with 1, 2, 3 artists, and then a fourth artist came in to just rent out the studio to listen to some stuff. And now my fifth session of the day is this podcast.
yeah,
And I don't see how I would do that with tape just because it's so fast without it in the digital world. Everything's a lot quicker. I can work with more artists and I can make more songs with more artists. Just the other night, someone called me. I think it was like 2:30. I was getting into bed. I was laying down. I was like, "Oh, what a crazy day! Time to go to bed." And I got a phone call from this studio line, and I was like, "Oh, do I pick this up? Do I not pick this up?" And I'm like, "If I pick this up, I'm gonna have to take the session because they're calling at this hour to be like, hey, are you open? I want to record a
yeah,
song."
right.
I picked it up, and it was this artist who has ties through the studio from before I was around, and there are many people because the studio's legacy goes way before I came around. I've only been here for 5 years, Studio 18, and this location's been here for 11. There was an artist named Sky XXX who got signed and had a top 40 hit, went to LA, did a bunch of videos, and he kind of bounced back and forth between Orlando and LA. Called me up and he's like, "Hey, I'm trying to get 2 hours." I was like, "Okay, let's do it. Screw it. It's gonna be a late night session, but come through. We'll record." We did 2 hour session and we recorded 6 songs. And that's one of those things because he's a rapper, he's a freestyler. He doesn't even have anything written down. He's driving to the session, listening to the beats he's gonna record over, and he's probably just mumbling in his car as he's like driving and following his GPS. Gets here, gets on the microphone. He does probably like 2, 3 takes per song, and then he goes, "Cool, that's it. Move on to the next." The rate at which we make music is pretty fast now, depending on the artist, of course. Certain freestylers and rappers like that, very feeling based. They don't need to think; they need to do. And if what comes out isn't that good, just forget about it and you just move on to the next. A lot of artists are quantity focused, which I have a respect for because I feel like that is how I gained a lot of my knowledge is burning through a bunch of different beats and songs and tracks and working with other artists. And I find rappers and singers who do that as well. Each new song is like a new lesson, a new learning experience, a new tool in their arsenal for future music. So the more reps they bang out in the gym or the more songs they do, just too many people get caught up in the details and it slows them down, especially in a fast-paced industry that we live in now. So he did great. 2 hours, 6 songs. He ended up staying pretty long, and I think I went to bed around 7 a.m. I saw the sun coming up, and I was like, "Oh, dude, I gotta kick you out. I gotta go to bed." But that's just the hours of this industry.
Yeah,
I get to wake up late. No one comes into the studio really early,
sure.
and if they do, I have a buddy that I call and they take care of that. But for the most part, most people are trying to get in nighttime, night sessions, 8 p.m., 10 p.m., midnight, 2 a.m. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, if it's not already evident to the audience listening now, like you must be Orlando's greatest wingman, as you phrased it. Because like someone could call you up at 2:30 a.m. and say, "Come help me out."
Amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. Holy crap. That's great. That's great. That's so brandable, and I'm stealing that.
You
I'm
take
gonna
that.
update my Instagram handle. It's just gonna be
Take
Caleb
it.
Nathan in quotes. It's gonna be Orlando's best wingman.
It's yours. You earned it.
That's great.
Hey, if I come to Orlando,
Yeah.
I'm gonna test it out. You need to give me a number. I'm gonna try it out.
Absolutely. Yes. Reach out. There's so much fun stuff to do over here. Universal, SeaWorld, Disney. Whether you go east or west, beach is about an hour and 10, hour and a half. And then close to my place here, 20 minutes from here is a springs called Wekiva Springs that I go to a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. I go paddleboarding all the time. There are some gators sometimes you'll see crossing or just laying sunbathing. But once I get to a certain size, they relocate it, which is nice because I don't feel too scared out to not paddleboard to some of the springs over there. But there's great things to do here. So if you're ever in the area, definitely reach out.
For sure, for sure. But yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me what you just said about then about being able to get away and go and do some fun things here or there. You were talking a bit earlier about the sacrifice of, what you do, that you've sacrificed, a lot of maybe lifestyle things to be able to commit as hard as you have to Studio 18, not only for the customers and the patrons of Studio 18 and the community there, but also for your own growth. Like, I love that that you're aware of the sacrifice, but also, like, I do think that you've been able to feel things and experience like real depth with people, and that you've only been able to get there because of the sacrifices that you've made. Those feelings and emotions, those moments, those, I'm sure, like facepalm moments mixed with some of those real triumphant moments when you finish a piece with someone. They all come because you sacrificed yourself in a way. And I think I do really respect and really value that. But I kind of want to go backwards a little bit, because you said that you moved to Florida with your grandma, right? Was that a plan or something that you had?
So my grandma lived in Kissimmee, which is right south of Orlando, and she's lived here for, oh man, I don't even remember, maybe somewhere 15 to 20 years. So I moved into my grandma's, but not with my grandma.
Okay.
So I wanted to get away from New Hampshire, and I'm glad that I did. I love to go back and visit. It's a beautiful place with beautiful mountains and forests and all that, but it's very woodsy, mostly suburbs, and the cities are not like they're not thriving cities. There's only like 2 or 3 cities in New Hampshire. It's kind of boring. The closest thing to me was like Boston.
Right, okay.
And the music scene in Boston was okay. There's a lot of like classical music and symphonic stuff and jazz to a certain degree. But yeah, Florida, there's a lot of music that I was listening to that was coming out of Florida that was just like, okay, I love all this stuff and I would be happy to work with these people. Let me just move in with my grandma, pay some rent, work at a restaurant for a bit, and just keep on making beats. And once I did that, I got to focus in on my goal here, moving here. It was like, all right, 2 things you need to worry about. 2 M's: money, music. Make a lot of money, pay grandma rent, save up, and then whenever you're not working at the restaurant, you're in the bedroom working on beats. And I think at first I thought I was just going to be a producer. And then I came here for an album release party. And after the party was done, I spoke to some of the engineers here and I ended up showing them some of my work. And they were really surprised because the software I used to make the beat was through Chrome. It's a website called audiotool.com. It was my introduction into production. It's free and there's no, I don't know, it's very limited scope. But at the same time, you can log in anywhere in the world that has internet into your account and just start making beats and instrumentals on. So when I showed them that and I showed them like, oh, I didn't use Ableton Live or FL Studios or Pro Tools. I just used this website.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just blown away. And they were like, did you mix this? Was this you? Did you do that? And at the time I was like, I don't know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what mixing is. Like, all I know is I made this. I thought I was a producer, but apparently I, mixed and mastered it too. But at the time I didn't know what those were. And for the genre I was working within, it was more electronic based. Because of the sound design is so technical and you get so like in depth and complicated, that you synthesize the sounds to the synthesizers, you program and arrange them. And since all that stuff is so technical anyway, you start to do your own mixing. Whereas a producer of hip hop beats will arrange stuff, slice things up, get the pattern right, and then pass it off to engineer to record and polish it up with their artist. The producer in the electronic scene is the artist, and they are the engineer because they have to be able to fully communicate their vision to the listener. So because of the genre I was producing, it made a really easy pivot for me that I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to internet the studio now. I'm going to help with engineering. And it was a very seamless transition. Like, I didn't even realize how effortless it would be, because I thought I was just like, all right, I'm a producer. That's what I am. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be known for this. And then I came here, and then it all changed. And I started working with all these amazing artists and producers, and I realized how good I am with working with other people and finalizing their ideas. So I realized, like, okay, this is awesome. This is what I want to do. Engineering. It took a while to like fully like accept it. I was like, do I want to do that? Do I want to be a producer? I kind of moved here to be a producer. It maybe took a few months to really just be like, yeah, I think engineering's the move for me. I don't know if it'll stay that way the whole time. Maybe I'll step more into production world at a certain point. But as it is right now, engineering's kind of my thing. I'm really happy with it. I'm really good at it. Efficient. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I also learned just then is that you are a really great storyteller and you're exceptionally good at reading between the lines. You can use that too. Because if we rewind a few minutes, I asked you about moving from New Hampshire with your grandma. And what I really wanted was for you to tell me your origin story of how you got from New Hampshire to Studio 18. And you did that without me even asking. And I think that's such a gift
Yeah.
to be able to do that, because it's what I wanted. But
Yeah.
I think it just sort of speaks to, this, I don't know what you would call it, because maybe my vocabulary is not advanced enough to sort of be able to articulate it, but I'll try my best. It's kind of like this sixth sense that you might have for being able to deal with ambiguity when an artist walks in and just like, but I just need you to do this, or I just want it to sound like that. And you're constantly just trying to sort of, figure out like where they're going with it, like this problem solving mindset. You just took a basic question that I asked you about your grandma and you told me exactly what I wanted to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even realize I did that.
No,
Yeah.
you're an awesome storyteller. I love it. And so
Thank you.
also, like touching on Studio 18 for a little bit, because yes, this is mostly an audio-based podcast. I try and give my audience snippets of the video from time to time. And hopefully as I grow myself, I'll be able to do that more and more. You were showing us around Studio 18. And obviously I was looking into it from the notes that you gave me. And I was getting to know Connor Smith's story, and I was getting to know a bit more about Studio 18 and its origins. And you touched on earlier the fact that artists call you up and they're in this neighborhood and they're looking at this house and they're like, am I in the right spot? Because from the outside, it does just look like an average, ordinary house. And it reminds me of like Scooby-Doo in a way. I was a big fan of Scooby-Doo when I was a kid. Like that they walk into like this house and they end up in a labyrinth.
Yeah.
That's what it's like on the inside, because I saw the photos of the outside versus the inside of that studio, and it's different in a beautiful way. Like what you guys have done there is sensational. I love the little touches, obviously with the panel behind you, all the artwork. It's so considerate. Like no wonder it's such a great place for people to come and feel like they want to be there and be part of the community, because you guys have put in so much work into making it look homely and attractive at the same time without going too far.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing to make people feel comfortable. A lot of other studios sometimes feel, I don't know, like a factory or part of an industry or like doctor's office, like white. And it's just like, it feels a little sterile sometimes in other places. And people really love the atmosphere here. The vibe, as they say. Most artists come in and be like, yo, the vibe here is crazy. We call it the V word. We're always like, all right, how long is it going to take before they use the V word? Usually it's like, if you're present as they're exploring around and you're just kind of standing patiently, it takes less than 5 minutes. And they're like, yo, this place is a vibe. Something about this place, dude. Like, this is the perfect vibe. Every little room has its own unique kind of personality to it. I try to make it feel like if you took all the gear out, it would still feel like a home, There's certain additions I've made to certain rooms that kind of help with that. Mostly the tracking room here in Studio A. I kind of added like a little library in the corner, 2 lounge chairs, and a coffee table. It used to be more like open, and it made sense if we were working with bands, but we work a lot of mostly like single artists or duos, and it's mostly pop music, and I don't work with a lot of acoustic bands or things like that. So the space, it's there if we need to use it, but until then, I kind of filled it out with some stuff to make it feel more homely, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love what you guys have done there. I mean, and also just to give the audience some context, you'd be what, like 25, right?
I am 25. That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like me trying to remember, what was I doing at 25? It wasn't anywhere near as sophisticated as what you're doing. So, big ups.
Thank you. Yeah. It's a weird position to be in. Very unique. There's not a lot of, I don't think there's another studio like this anywhere in the world, to be honest. I mean, sometimes people say there's a spot in Miami that has, I think it's called Circle House or something, but it's a similar vibe to this. But I don't know. Orlando's a unique city because of, one, the blend of cultures, and then 2, tourism because of, the parks and all that. Disney World, SeaWorld, the beaches. We get a lot of, one year when I was reading a Guinness World Book of Records, I read Orlando was like the top most traveled through city in the whole planet. We get a good blend of mix of people here. So with that comes just different backgrounds, different cultures, different music genres and styles and flavors and tastes. This place is definitely a big hub for sure.
It's super important to have that fusion of different cultures and new and old and fresh and established and proven ideas coming together. I think that is unique. And I guess you'd have to call up that other studio and be like, hey guys, how long does it take for people to use the V word when they walk through your doors? That's
the real test. It's like, how long does it take till they just be like, hey man, I gotta hand it to you. The vibe, man. The other thing that it shows is that someone like really cared. Like this wasn't just made for people just to come in and out and to make money off of it. It's like, hey, these are some of the greatest artists, visual artists, painters, graphic designers here all over our walls. Look around. Like these are some of the greatest from right here in our neighborhoods. And, you should learn about them. Let's talk about them. All of our staff members know about them and tell you the stories behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you work on your craft and you work on your art, you inevitably will also be put on a platform somewhere, hopefully by us. If not, no big deal. But we love to help elevate other people and creatives in the community, give them the spotlight. I use my story all the time on Instagram. I don't post a lot, but I use my story all the time. All the different sessions I do or the events I go to, I'll repost and throw a little something on the story just to keep people engaged with what's going on in my life, but also just around the city and inside the studio here. That's kind of my platform that I've allowed to kind of shine light on other people and entities such as Eclectica, which is like an all-women's aesthetic, artistic photography magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Sound 1000, my producer friend started a music promotion and like events coordinating for DJs and different artists. And that's another one that I like to participate with. Yeah, different things going around the city. I just like to have my hand in.
Yeah, again, I really love that. I think one of the things that I guess this podcast hasn't necessarily, it started off with the travel adventures, but it hasn't necessarily stuck to that. And one of the things that maybe my audience might be thinking is, well, why is he bringing us a sound engineer from Orlando today? Like, it's so random. But at the same time, a lot of the things that anyone and everyone has talked about in this podcast in one context or another is community and being part of a community. And I touched on it earlier and I'll say it again. It's just really evident when I watch what you're doing through online and whatever you share, how important a part of the community that you are there, and that you understand that it's a mutually beneficial thing. Like you get as much from being part of that community as they give, or as you give to them, I suppose. And that's such a healthy mindset. Yeah.
It's a positive feedback loop. I just put a lot of love and energy, and it's like an investment. I invest it into other people who I see deserve it, who are also putting in the time like I do, who are also passionate about these things and care and are refining their work and pushing into different mediums or different genres or different styles or different emotions, even if they're just staying in their own lane, doing their own thing. I like to invest into these people because I think it pays off in the end. I think I'm good enough to know, like, hey, this person really's got something good going on. Even if I'm just investing a little bit of time and energy, a little bit of advice, something as simple as that can go a long way. One of the artists that I was recording said something really awesome to me once that I never really thought about. Obviously, as an artist, you get to speak and have your voice heard by an audience, and you can change a lot of people's lives through just one artist. And an artist buddy of mine, was going through a rough period, and we went out together. And at the end of the night, he was like, "Hey, man, I just want to say thank you. What you do is super important, because as artists, we have a big audience that we reach out. Hundreds, sometimes thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions. And since you've worked with thousands, almost 1,000 artists, just think of how many times that compounds. Like, all of those audiences combined, it's like an order of magnitude of influence that your positivity has. So I guess it's always like, I'm always trying to be my best and do my best, because the goodness of it will be amplified. And I don't have to take credit for it, but I just know that it's out there.
Yes. If you haven't already, find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or TikTok, where you can catch additional content and grace us with your thoughts. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the episode. Yes, and that's such a beautiful message, because I don't think people talk like that enough. And I think one of the things that I'm trying to do with this podcast is, I guess, share those stories and meet with those people that think like that. And you touched on the lockdowns earlier, and how disconnected we became. And so how do we become reconnected again? Or do we just resign to the fate of we became disconnected? And as you touched on, there's some lingering side effects of that still around. But, I sit here and I'm listening to you, and I think, for sure, 100% that Caleb has the right mindset to help bring us back to a place where we are thinking about one another and being together again, and not allowing, for example, governments to dictate what we do and don't do, but allowing the power of communities that we can create with one another through art, and the appreciation that we have for being a wingman in someone else's journey, or for our influence by being the best version of ourselves, to have that order of magnitude that's multiplied exponentially. Like, I'm sure you sleep well at night, or in the morning, or whatever time of day you get to sleep.
Usually I sleep in the morning. Yeah. It's my bedtime is usually, if I'm lucky, maybe 2 a.m. If it's, if it's been busy, it's probably more like, 4 or 5. But it's just the name of the game. I prefer it sometimes, because like, sometimes that can be my quiet time. And that's important, when any hour of the day, a stranger can just walk in and be like, "Hey, I heard this was a really cool studio. You mind showing me around?" And, I can have a bowl of cereal in my hand. I'll be like, "Oh, yeah, let me, this is the lobby. This is Studio B, this is Studio A," out of nowhere, Small things like that. It's another compromise, a little bit of peace, a little bit of privacy, a little bit of my personal life gets compromised. But in the end, it's totally worth it. I've learned so much. I've done so much. Yeah.
Yeah, what a vibe. I love that. It took me an hour and 3 minutes to say the V word, by the way.
That's good. You held out for a very long time. That's actually very impressive.
I couldn't stop.
You're an outlier.
I couldn't. As soon as you mentioned it, I was like, how much longer can I hold off? But yeah, I mean, you touched on artists there. You touched on that buddy of yours who's an artist, and you've touched on a whole bunch of other artists that you work with at Studio 18. Have you got any sort of stories, memorable moments, special favorite artists? You probably don't want to call out any faves, but maybe you do. I'm not sure.
Special moments, man. I think Midnight Mondays are the craziest things, because it's midnight on a Monday and we have, 80, sometimes 90 people here just following each other on Instagram, airdropping each other beats, being like, "Hey, I need a feature," or, "Oh, you're a photographer," or, "Oh, wow, this videography is great. Like, you did a great job in this video. I think I got something coming up. Like, let's learn." People connect here. People, usually I run past the aux in this studio, so we literally just pass around an aux to, a checklist. I go through a checklist. Boom. All right, this guy's up. Boom. Here's the aux. Play a song, and we all talk about it. And then we go to the kitchen towards the end of the night, and then we start playing instrumentals, and then people just start freestyling, off the cuff. We wrap up around 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m., and I think it's just awesome. That stuff is so cool. Those events are so special, and just kind of a testament to how special the culture is here in this city, and I guess in this studio specifically, because I know of other studios that do events and stuff like that, but I don't think they have the brand power or just the culture that this studio and the legacy of this studio and people before me have built it up to be. Yeah. There's so many crazy. I know you're trying to get a wild, crazy story out of me. It's so I'm trying to think.
See, that's you reading between the lines again. You're good at that.
Yeah, because we already touched upon the Midnight Monday, so that was kind of a cop out answer. So let me leave you on something good. Do you edit silence? Can I just sit here in silence for a minute?
I was just about to tell the audience that you were gazing off longingly into the distance, recalling some of your
Yeah.
favorite stories. And
Um,
I am a mind reader, by the way, and I can see you going, no, I can't tell that story on air. I can't tell that story on air. You're like,
yeah, 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 yeah. I'm like, oh, can't tell that. No, that's gonna
you've got that
whatever.
face.
Ruffle some feathers.
It's like a poker
Yeah.
machine of stories going through your head, going, and you just like discarding them. Nope, not telling that. Not telling that. I love it. But I mean,
I think it's all amazing. It's so crazy because it's like it's every day is just different people, different stories. Lots of hiccups, lots of like troubleshooting I have to go through and like juggle things and make hard decisions, of course. But it's so wild to just wake up every day, be here. It's like the best trap ever. Like I'm trapped here, and it's a good thing because it's like where else would I want to go?
yeah, you could commit a crime and they could put you under house arrest and you'd be good for it.
I'll be like, oh, great, this is great for my career. This is the one career that I cook a lot of my own foods in the kitchen. I do. What am I? Ooh, I don't know if anything's like off limits or taboo or
Absolutely.
crazy.
Not sure. I mean, people touch on all kinds of stuff on this podcast, but yeah, I guess the audience can also use their imagination and think about some of the crazy things that might happen in recording studios, especially when there's so much, like you touched on earlier, there's so much spontaneity involved in an artist's creative process. Like you were talking about, was it Scotty XX or someone that was coming to the studio?
Sky XX.
Sky
Yes.
XX.
Yeah.
Sky XX. And you said that just on the way to studio, it's 2:30 a.m. It's freestyling. Nothing's written down. And so I guess that element of spontaneity is just a mystery sometimes, and you never know what you're going to walk into. I love the idea of that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just never know what's going to happen. Never know who's going to show up. It's kind of a beautiful thing. That is what has led me to lead more with my heart instead of my head. To be less logical and more creative. You don't have a choice when there's so many like logical people think of things and think things through. But when there's so much chaos going on and so many random things, so many moving factors and pieces, it's impossible to try to think things when you have to just react to things and roll with the punches in this environment. That's the biggest takeaway I've taken from this place. That's the most I've grown in. I mean, I've learned a lot about like mixing vocals and getting things very precise and industry level standard and things like that. But I think the one thing I'll carry for the rest of my life, no matter what, is just the people skills and just like adapting to circumstance and troubleshooting. That's just going to carry with me forever.
Yeah, and that's such a skill. Like, it's one of those things that everyone needs, but you can't pick up from a university degree or a college certificate or whatever you call it there. That is the skill that we all actually ultimately want to acquire, but we just don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like when you were talking about walking in with your tape and you didn't realize what mixing was. You don't know what you don't know is one of my favorite sayings. But I think for real, it's the skills that you're acquiring there are just so important in just general life. It's so underrated, so underestimated. Yeah, I really love that. And you're very in touch with yourself as well. I mean, you talked about at a young age, just sort of knowing what you wanted to do and where you wanted to go. It feels like you've had quite a linear trajectory of being able to synthesize your thoughts and go, that's what I want to do. Okay, my grandma lives in Florida. I'll go down there. Money and music. That's what I need to focus on. Then you step into Studio 18. You've been there 5 years. Started out as an intern, was it? And have moved into the lead position. It's an amazing trajectory that your career's been on. Where next, I suppose? What are you looking forward to when you've had it seems like a smooth run?
What am I looking forward to right now? I'm not. I like what I'm doing right now. And, tomorrow is the farthest I try to look. I got here by taking one day at a time and not trying to look too far into the future. Actually, nowadays I've been answering phone calls and booking sessions a little bit more recently. So I am kind of looking into calendars a bit more and booking things out farther than usual. But for the longest time, it was just like, all right, what do I got today? What do I got tomorrow? Okay, cool. And anything beyond that really wasn't of importance to me too much. I don't think this feels like I could be here for another 5 years, 10 years, and I'll still be happy. I'm not looking forward to anything beyond here. And there might be a day where I have to adapt and shift gears and troubleshoot and figure out what is next. But, the skills I learned here will help me solve that and move forward.
Mm.
If I had to move on to something next, I guess I could shoot my resume over to like bigger labels, I guess, and then maybe. Here's the thing with Orlando. I think Orlando's cool because it's got a great scene, music scene, a lot of artists, a lot of creatives. The music industry doesn't have a good footing here, and some people blame Disney for it. I'm not going to pretend that I understand the macro situation of, Disney and Universal owning parks here in Orlando supposed to being, like a touristy spot as opposed to like a creative hub. But, some people blame Walt Disney for the industry not like being as big as it could be here. If anything happened to the studio, I don't know if I'd stay in Orlando because I don't feel as if any other studio would be right for me. I know of a few other, maybe there's a few that I'm not aware of and that I'd look into, but as of right now, this place is just like magic. It's just kind of like a hidden oasis in the middle of a very unsuspecting neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. It's totally hidden. Yeah, people should look at the pictures online. It looks like a house. But I do, I really love that.
If you look through some of our videos on YouTube and our Instagrams, you'll see like different portions of the house and all that and the studio as it is, about as it is right now. But if you go onto YouTube and you type in our studio address, 1209 Formosa Avenue, it shows you a video from 11 years ago of what the house looked like before it was converted into the studio. And obviously it was a process to go from where it was in that video to where it is now, but everything was completely different. And now it's just like a crazy. It is like a maze in here. There were definitely more rooms added. The lobby was kind of blocked off. You used to be able to, if you walked into like the front of the studio, you could walk into like the living area or the kitchen area like really fast, but that was blocked off, and it's very much a business now. If anyone were to buy the home, it probably wouldn't be at the same value that it was bought at, I guess.
But if they were buying a studio, depends who you buy.
Exactly. It depends. Exactly, yeah.
It's like, you got an inbuilt studio in that place? What's your price?
Yeah, if that's important to them, they might,
Exactly.
They might be valued more.
It's all about how you look at things. And I love the way that you answered that question because, sometimes I speak to people and they are looking forward to something. There is something planned. And yes, because you're managing a business there, you have responsibilities to be organized, and that means getting the calendar out from time to time, right? But then, you said that you don't want to look beyond today. I love that. It's all about the present moment. I just really love how you said that. It reminds me, one of the listeners of the podcast, Carmel, who's now become a good friend. I was hanging out with her in Interstate a couple of days ago, and she introduced me to this Indigenous guy, an Aboriginal fellow named Alan Martin, who works with a lot of youths in detention centres. Unfortunately, we have a real systematic problem with all that stuff here in Australia. And Alan was saying something along the lines of, what's wrong with people today is that they're too busy thinking about the future and no one's thinking about today. And what you said there just kind of reminded me of, what Alan said and how he believes that if you think too far ahead, it can cause issues for not only yourself, but your community. And here I am speaking to someone who's like, I only focus on today. And I guess that's the reason why from the outside in, it looks like your trajectory has been so smooth because you've just taken one day at a time and thought only about that present moment. And maybe that's the key that we're all looking for, ?
Yeah, I think that is. I think it is. I think that's exactly right. I loved how he worded that because it's time consuming and it's draining to always try to have a wider scope on things, and there's a time and place for that, of course, and some people are really good at it. Some people can really see the long game and make a long play, but I don't want to use the word narrow-minded, but I definitely have a tight frame for an attention span. Like if I can really tunnel in on things and get into the nitty-gritty of the details. And because of that, it becomes very taxing to worry too much about the future or plan things out. And instead, I much rather prefer to focus on what's right ahead of me, get that right, and then move on. I got diagnosed with ADD in middle school, and I was doing really rough in a lot of classes for two reasons. One, I kept forgetting about homework because I just had a terrible attention span. But also, I couldn't finish my quizzes and tests on time for whatever reason. I could never finish. And I don't know. I have to be passionate about what I'm looking at or doing or working on. And if I'm not, my brain will not. It refuses. It'll be like, I can only read like one social studies problem and then start thinking about something else and drift away. And then I come back and I'm start finishing the test again and stuff like that. But yeah, that in a lot of ways in my past, that was a weakness of mine. Like I couldn't, because of not having like the bigger picture and just sitting down, and my attention span is definitely was hurting me in like my previous chapter. But now here, because I'm so inspired and passionate about all this stuff, it's really easy to just bang out these songs just one after another and work with artist after artist. And it's a lot of juggling and it can be overwhelming at times, but luckily I have a great team here at the studio that helps me through a lot of this. And a lot of the artists are very understanding, and I think I have a good relationship with them. I've learned to do that, learn how to make friends with the people I work with, because it just makes the job easier. Don't think I'm not still thinking about a crazy story, because I'm definitely still trying to pull one out. I know we're running close to time here, so like I'm really I got maybe a few, and I also made a realization.
Hit me.
The first realization is there's a lot of ridiculous crap that goes on in the music industry. And a lot of stuff is like funny to talk about with friends, but sometimes like in this setting, it usually comes at someone's expense.
Yeah, sure.
And there are a lot of artists that live crazy lives and do crazy things and that get themselves into trouble. And sometimes that somehow affects my life here at this studio.
Yeah.
It's tricky because I don't want to throw any artists under the bus, and I don't want to, I know a lot of artists who struggle with, sometimes it's alcohol problems, sometimes it's drug problems, sometimes they just hang with the wrong crowd, sometimes they're they were neglected or deprived of attention as a younger person, and now they're an artist and they're doing everything for other people's approval and things like that. And just people live crazy wild lives, and it's hard for me to pick one story. Let me at least give you something meaningful here, though.
For sure. That's what I really want.
The powerful thing about music and being an engineer, what I've learned, it's allowed me to not just meet people and have like a business type relationship with them. Because of the nature of music, it's art, it's expression, it's, in a lot of ways therapy for a lot of people. So I have worked with a lot of people who were brought up in rough areas or who live in rough areas right now, and they will open up to me and tell me things that maybe their best friends or their homies don't know, because they gotta keep it up, like bottled up in the inside, and it's hard to talk about. But the music is an outlet for them, and it's like their therapy. So that's a beautiful thing for sure.
Yeah.
Lots of artists can use that as their way to make sense of what's going on in the world around them, whether it's something that happened recently in their family, or if they're just in a rough part of life. That's something that I've learned to take very seriously, and I'm very grateful that a lot of artists are comfortable enough to do that, to open up, tell me things that their best friend might not know, or their parent or mom or sister or brothers might not know, something that they're working with and dealing with by themselves.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you've ended on that note, because you're right. I mean, part of me did want some dirt and a juicy story, and another part of me just kind of, I'm going with the flow and I want to talk about whatever you want to talk about. And if it's important to you to remain respectful of the stories, no matter how wild they are, because that it's ultimately throwing under a bus, that's really important to me too. So much respect there. Caleb Moscoso is like an engineer.
Well, let me maybe I can throw myself under the bus. Maybe there's one last story.
You don't have to.
Can we talk about drug use? Can we talk about drug use?
It's been done before. It's
been done before here? Okay, all right. Let me throw myself under the bus here. I did mushrooms here one time. I'll tell you that story.
Oh, yeah, talk to me about that.
There we go. Okay.
You saw the eyes light up.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Quarantine. In anticipation leading up to what the government, forced us to shut down, the owner kind of closed, I think, a few days early because he saw it coming. He was like, guys, this is kind of bad, so let's shut down. Let's renovate. Let's do some stuff in a few areas. Let's patch things up, let's paint things, let's work on the roof, let's work on our garden. We shut down. We worked for like a week straight. And one of the artists that I recorded, she was kind enough to be like, "Hey, you've never tried mushrooms. Here's a mushroom chocolate." And I was like, "Oh, thank you. I will try this at a later date." And that was like 2 weeks previous to the cleanup that we did. And yeah, after a hard 5 days, at the end of our week of cleaning, we took some mushroom chocolates, and I gotta say that was probably the most spiritual I've ever felt in my life. It was very unique. It felt like the walls were breathing here, and I felt the weight and the gravity of all the different people who have traveled through the studio. It really felt like a living, breathing thing. And to this day, there are still people who come into the studio out of nowhere, and I'm like, "Hey, can I help you?" And they're like, "Yeah, I used to live here. Like, do you know Connor?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know Connor. He hired me like 5 years ago. Like, this is so cool. How long ago did you live here? Like, what is your story?" And I learned about the past history of this place, and there are still things I'm learning to this day. There's still things I will learn, continue to learn. But on that particular day, for me, when I was tripping on the mushrooms, it all clicked, and it felt very real, and it felt like a living entity that I helped take care of, and it helps take care of me back. Yeah, it was a meaningful thing. I felt like mushrooms are more of a meaningful experience than most other. And yeah, there was some visual trippy stuff going on because the lights and all the different spots can like strobe into different like flashing colors, and I've got art that looks crazy because if you shine different colored lights on art, it'll different like colors start to move around. And we were out in the garden, there was a fire, it was just a beautiful, peaceful time. And it was a weird time, quarantine in the studio with no business. It allowed me to work on a lot of personal work with my other roommates and stuff. But it was so weird because it felt like summer vacation as an adult, and I kind of treasured it in a way. I know I try to be careful with who I say that to because some people went through a lot of terrible stuff during that time, but for me, it was almost like just like a really extended moment of peace and time off, and I'm very lucky and I'm very glad for that. And just want to shout out Connor Smith, founder of Studio 18, who's allowed me to be in this amazing safe space and allow me to grow to the spot I am now. And this place is a magical spot. But I definitely didn't need the mushrooms to know that. It just helped a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, it's like it started off with someone, you were saying that you were about to throw yourself under a bus, but yet somehow you managed to make it really beautiful and profound and meaningful. It's just a gift of yours. That wasn't throwing yourself under the bus at all. That was beautiful, man. I'm like,
well, if my mom and dad watch this now, they know I've done mushrooms. But so
please
it depends who the viewer is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hope your mum and dad listen to this for sure, because I'm sure they'll learn little bits and pieces about you that maybe I haven't got to know yet. And
yeah, for sure.
You've been so generous with me and with my audience, and it's been a real pleasure just to sit here and get to know you on a personal level. This one person that I got in touch with through social media, and we tee up a chat where anything could happen and this could go so wrong, but I feel like we've just got along so well. Like you're a buddy of mine now or something like that. I love that.
Appreciate that.
And yeah, I guess usually I ask my guests to say, hey, listen, if there's any advice that you have for aspiring artist or just anyone that's, maybe struggling to think of what they want to do with their lives for their career at some point, is there any last words?
Yeah. I would say, obviously you can't do it all. It's not possible to say yes to everything. There are certain things you have to say no to. You just got to know what you're willing to sacrifice. It's all about pros and cons if you think about it too much. If you're the type of person who thinks too much, though, then you might be better off not listening to me. It all depends on the listener, Certain people need to walk away from certain things. Maybe you drink too much, you spend too much time at, in a bars with certain friends, or maybe you need to sacrifice certain social media hours of your day or your video game time for your day, and then invest that time somewhere else. But if you can and you are able to, I think it's cool to say yes to as much as you can and show up and show out. Do what you say you're going to do and do it well. Meet the expectation, if not exceed it, and just always stay active. It's really a marathon and not a sprint. So no one project is going to excel you to where you want to be. It's really about just making the habits, small little habits of every day of just, I'm going to do this today. I'm going to work with this person today. I'm scheduling this to work on and just doing it. Do more and think less is my motto, my creed. But there are certain people out there who need to think a little more. So I try to be careful. Some people are knuckleheads and do crazy stuff.
Hey,
so
we're not for everyone, but certainly I know that there's a lot of people in my audience that'll take something away from that message for sure. And yeah, it's been I've got more than I bargained for with this chat for sure. And I say that a lot, as my listeners might know, but I'm here talking to someone I just met, like I said, online, expecting to have conversations about audio engineering. But then we talked about so much more than that. Not only did I learn that you're, one of Orlando's premier engineers, but you're also a strong community man. Like, there's a lot to you, Caleb. Like, I appreciate having you on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. Louis, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure as well.
We'd love to know what you thought of that episode of the Lui Diaz Podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and even TikTok to let us know. And be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave us a review on Spotify, where you can catch some of our other really great episodes. Thanks for listening, and catch you next time.